Hello, thanks for joining me. Today's video I'm going to talk about my top 5 cars to own. These ones are the ones which I've owned myself over the years. So let's make a start. These are in no particular order. These are like the 5 cars which really stand out. So the first one on my list is the BMW E34 5 Series. The one in the picture here, which you can see, is a 525. So it has a BMW's straight 6-cylinder engine, which is a 2.5 petrol. When I bought this car, I bought it in 2010. And looking back now, I think this was a really corker of a car. The build quality was really exceptional. Well, they are exceptional on these cars. I think these are one of the last generation of cars by BMW to be handmade. The quality is really of another level if you compare it to some of the other cars. They put, I think, some modern cars to shame. And when you close the door, it's got that reassuring clunk, and it's a really heavy car. It feels really solid. I really love this car, and I kind of regret selling this. I wish I'd kept hold of this car from all the cars I've owned. I wasn't keen actually at the time on the colour, but when I look at it now, I actually really like that colour. It's like a blue, I don't have a name for it, it's like a bluish colour, light blue, but it's a really beautiful car. As you can see there, the interior, those are the M Sport seats. I bought those separately and then kind of fitted them in. And these are leather. These are very comfortable seats, all manually operated. Mine was the automatic, and it was so easy to drive. I used mine to kind of commute to work every day on the motorway. I'm a perfect commuter car because you just put it into drive and you're in D and you're driving, and it's so easy. You know, you just kind of go to your journey very relaxed. One of the things which I liked about the cockpit, and this is, I think, true for all BMWs of that era and the previous generations, is that the cockpit is really all driver orientated. So as you can see, you got the steering wheel here, but then all of the instrument cluster is directed towards the driver. And so in that respect, all of the dials are really easy, within easy reach of the driver. It's a very spacious car. You know, there's lots of space. The boot is big, and you know, 4 people. It can seat 4 people in relative ease. So in that respect, it's quite a practical car if you're a family man as well. Now this is the engine. So this is the 525, BMW's signature inline 6-cylinder. This generation of the 6-cylinder was known as the M50. And this engine did not use a cam belt, it used a timing chain. If you look at here, this section here where we're pointing the mouse, this had a system known as VANOS, which is like a variable valve timing. So basically it drives to get the maximum light efficiency. So when you're kind of driving, it kind of, I don't know the technical terms, but it's very kind of supposed to be best for the engine to kind of get the best performance out of it. The earlier versions of this engine didn't have the VANOS, so these were non-VANOS. If you've got one of these E34s or some other BMWs with this particular M50 engine, and you're wondering how do you know if yours is VANOS or non-VANOS, if yours here has this kind of bulge here, then you know it's VANOS. If it's flat here and you don't see this here, then you know it's non-VANOS. They're a very reliable engine. They are very thirsty. I think the most I ever got from a full tank, and that was driving like a granny, was about 400 miles, which if you think about it, for a 2.5 straight 6 big heavy car like that, that's actually quite good. But if you're going to drive like that, what's the point? You know, I mean, you don't have to speed, but it's a lovely engine, very smooth. The power delivery comes, you know, with ease. You can just coast along and just relax with this car. You put your foot down, and it does take off. But you know, bear in mind that the fuel kind of goes down on that. So that was the E34 5 Series. I've owned a number of 5 Series, and I'm going to talk about the next E34 which I've owned. Okay, so the next one, next to that Porsche there, is the E34 525 Sport. Now, how this basically differs from the 525 SE, which was a blue one, is that it has some kind of sporting features to maybe resemble the M5 a little bit. So you've got a spoiler at the back there, and these are known as BMW's throwing star alloys, and so these alloys came on the BMW M5. Now with these alloys you can actually remove this cover, revealing just black alloy behind. So some people used to take the covers off and then drive it without. I personally didn't like the look of that. I prefer the look with them on. I was actually looking for some more pictures, but they were on my old laptop. I need to get that repaired because I had that and my laptop kind of died. So obviously this is my computer, so this is the only one that I've had. But again, very similar. It was pretty much identical to the SE. Only main difference with this one as well is that these seats, they came with the M Sport seats. So they're like the ones which I had in the E34 525, except these were half leather and half velour. And yeah, this particular one here, I think it was about 195,000 miles when I sold that one, and you could not tell the difference between that one and the previous one. The previous one was about 100 odd thousand, and this one was nearly double. You could not tell the difference. So that is a real testament to kind of the driving and kind of the longevity of these cars. Again, I don't think cars are built like this anymore. Okay, so let's move to the next one. Okay, so I also had a E34 535 Sport. Now, this one here, again, it is very similar to the 525 in terms of interior. Of course, the main difference with the 535 is the engine. These use the M30 engine, M30 straight six. These are very, very powerful cars. There's not that much difference, I think, in terms of performance from my memory. It was very torquey, and I think the kind of best way to describe it, really, if you're driving pretty fast in one of these, it feels a bit like a roller coaster. This was automatic, and those M30 engines, they go back quite a long time. I think they came out in the 70s in one of the 6 series, I believe, and 6 and 7 series. Very good engine. They need a bit of maintenance. The M30s don't have a cam belt, so that's a good thing. They're chain driven, and just it's a lovely car, lovely engine. These engines are really suited really to the motorway, as were the 525s. I really have a soft spot for these E34s, and I can't really differentiate which one I would own. The 525 or the 535, both are beautiful cars. So what I've done is, in this video, I've just put basically the E34. If I could, and I had the space, I would own all of these cars again if I had the space. In fact, I did own, I think, at 1.5 cars, and it was just a headache because I didn't have the space at the time. But without hesitation, I would recommend an E34. If you are thinking of buying one, there are a couple of models which I would personally avoid. They come in a 1.8 4-cylinder engine. I would not buy that one because the engine is too small, and it's too much weight for that engine. So the 4-cylinder, I would steer clear of that one. There's no point. It's going to be thirsty, and if you're going to have a car like that, why not go for the 6-cylinder? BMWs were really known. Their signature was the straight six. That's what BMWs of old were known for. And a BMW, I think, without a 6-cylinder, a straight six, naturally aspirated engine, really strays away from what BMWs were all about. Front engine, rear wheel drive, minimal driver aids, and the mechanical component there in terms of the driver involvement combined with balance. I think BMWs of this era were very special. Just to note there, for the eagle-eyed amongst you, it has the M5 badge there. This was not an M5. This was just a badge there, but these were fantastic cars. Another one which I would maybe stay away from is the 520, because the fuel economy is the same as the 525, but with less horsepower. So if you're going to get the 520, you may as well just get the 525. Pretty much the same fuel economy, miles per gallon, but you're getting a next one. This is the E34 535 interior. Now, as you can see here, this was a light blue colour. These were all electrically operated sports seats, velour. These are actually very comfortable, and what I liked about these seats is that because they were velour, you didn't slide around in them. Like in the leather seats, you slid around a bit in them because they're so big, but with these ones you kind of stayed planted. And the side bolsters provided, I think, very good support. Now, because of the size of this car, it's not a car which I would recommend that you go around and pull it sideways and stuff. It's more than capable of doing that, if that is what you want to do. But I think these cars are really, from BMW, the ultimate motorway cruiser. This was known as the M-Tech 2 steering wheel. Now, it may sound silly, but this steering wheel makes a hell of a difference to how it drives. With these kind of grips here, you can grip the steering wheel, and it just feels more easier to control. First time I got in an E34, I thought, wow, this is quite a big car, but you soon get used to it, and the size of the car becomes irrelevant. As you can see here from this picture, as I mentioned before, you've got the instrument cluster and the dashboard all orientated towards the driver, and this is what I really loved about the BMWs of this time. I think over time they went to a more straight panel, and I think I don't like that. I prefer, if it's going to be driver orientated, have it all focused and orientated around the driver. Again, I could rave on all day about this car, but I absolutely love these ones. If you've got one, just keep hold of it, and if you're thinking of buying one, get one with good service history, because I do think over time these are going to go up in value, these E34s. Right, let's move on to the next one. This is the BMW E36 3 Series. I had this for about 3 years, and I took it off my mum. She had it for about 3 years before me. She bought it with about 47,000. She gave it to me at about 120, and then when I sold it, it was about 180,000 miles. On the same clutch, can you believe? So I didn't change the clutch. This one was just a 1.6. Despite it being just a 1.6, a small engine, it was actually quite nippy, and the miles per gallon was actually very good. On a motorway run, you could get very, very good miles per gallon. So it was a good, quite a fuel efficient car. One of the things why have I put this in my list is really because of the handling. It is superb handling. You've got this was a manual, very similar to the E34 and all BMWs of this time. The dash was driver focused, driver orientated, and it just handled so well, and it was so balanced and poised. When you were driving, you can feel the stiffness of the chassis. So once I remember I was driving very slowly, coming off a roundabout, and then all of a sudden it started to drift sideways. Now, unintentionally, didn't mean to drift it. Just steered. I remember steering the steering wheel into a direction of the back end, and it just kind of corrected itself. Very easy to handle. I was actually thinking of getting a 328 coupe of this version, the E36. Sadly, I never got round to getting that one. But that's really been that's on my bucket list of cars to own, is like the 328 or possibly the M3, because the 6-cylinder in those cars are just nuts. Such a big, powerful engine in what is a relatively small body. It just flies. I remember going in a 325 and it just really flew at the time. And I think that engine is perfectly suited to that car. Again, similar to the E34, I think these are going to be going up in value. So if you are thinking of getting one, I think just grab it now whilst you got the opportunity. Let's look at the next one. The Lexus LS400. Now in the picture here you can see both of these were mine. The one on the right was a 1991 Mark 1 and the one on the left, the silver one, was a Mark 3. That was a 1996. I've owned both the LS400s. Now the main difference between the Mark 1 and the Mark 3, I would say, is that noticeably the body's a bit smaller on the Mark 1. Handling is a bit easier to handle because it's slightly smaller. It's not a car which you'd want to kind of throw around corners and start doing, drifting and all that kind of stuff. It's a gentleman's car. You take it on the motorway, you just put it into D and you relax, you drive, you cruise. It is the perfect car for just commuting to work. If I was to buy another LS400, I would go for the Mark IV because it's got the sat nav, and it was a last generation of that car. The last year, I believe, was the year 2000 when they made those LS400s. These were kind of had a cam belt, so those were one of the things which were part of the maintenance schedule. They were just basically big Toyotas with a Lexus badge. Well, they are Toyotas, but the Lexus brand under the Toyota umbrella. Very good cars, very easy to drive. It's not a car really you're going to get excited about, but if you just want to get from A to B in a relaxed way, and everyone's going to go in comfort, it's one of the best cars. And one of the good things with this kind of era of cars is that it's all electronic free. I mean, you do have some electronics, but you don't have all the other electronics which modern cars have, and all the headache, all the engine management lights to have to deal with. Beautiful car, very easy to drive. And the one on the right, I took it down to Bristol and Bath for a family holiday, and I put in about £90. And I got about 400 miles to that tank. So I filled up in, from my hometown, went to Bristol, came home, 400 miles. I thought that was pretty impressive for a 4-litre V8. If you look at old videos of Lexus, you can see that in the commercial, they stacked, I think, wine glasses on the engine whilst it was still running. And sorry, not on the engine, on the bonnet, and it didn't fall. And they did, I think, a similar thing with the engine, and it didn't, the glasses didn't fall. That's a real testament to the kind of smoothness of the engine. Now, I think I've mentioned in one of my other videos that the Lexus LS400 was one of Toyota's kind of standout cars in terms of it being a car which pioneered Toyota at that time. Toyota embarked on a quest with a mission to enter the luxury car manufacturing industry when it was really dominated by BMW, Mercedes, Jaguar, etc. at the time. So they're entering a market which had quite stiff competition, and I think they did very well. So yeah, Lexus LS400. Let's move on to the next one. Lexus LS430. What I like about this car is that it's a good balance, I think, between a modern feeling car and kind of computer free era. So this one here, the model which I had, was the 2002. Now this one, the early ones came with coil springs. This one had air suspension. Sometimes they are known to kind of go, and that can be a problem for some owners. But that's really one of the main problems. And I think on the earlier models, the pre-facelifted models, they had a problem with something to do with the oil cooler, which I think was a pipe going near the gearbox, which could cause potentially gearbox issues. I think if you were to buy one of these, that's something which I would definitely do as preventative maintenance. There's something which you can do, which you can get done to prevent a catastrophic incident happening, causing you hundreds, if not maybe 1,000 or so in repairs. This was such a relaxing car to drive. It's got so many features. It was so advanced for the time. So I'll give you an example. In 2002, 2001, I think when this first one came out, it had soft closing doors. Watch some YouTube reviews now of maybe Range Rover and some of the other cars which are out now in 2020, and they talk about that. And Lexus were doing this over nearly 20 years ago. So that shows kind of how far ahead they were. It was such a solid car. I mean, Japanese cars, I think some of them do have a reputation for being kind of flimsy and cheap feeling. Certainly not with this LS430. It's solid. It feels very, very secure. The seats are exceptionally comfortable. Pardon me. And depending on the spec which you get, this one here had heated and cooled perforated seats. So if you're in the winter, you just you can select the heat to make it make the seats warmer. If you're in the summertime and it's really boiling, put it on the cooled setting, and it will just kind of cool you. Really lovely car. Driving position, it's all electrically operated, so you've got electric seats. The wheel is electrically adjustable like the LS400, so you can get a good position. It came with sat nav, so you could use that as well, and it uses the VVTi engine. This one was a 4.4 litre V8. Now, one of the things, I think one of its party tricks is it actually got quite good miles per gallon. I routinely was getting about 380 to 400 miles to a full tank of just that kind of general driving, some mixture of a little bit of local driving and motorway driving. If you are a passenger, you will be spoilt in this car, especially if you sit in the back, because you can move back and forward, electrically adjustable seats. You've got blinds on the left hand side and right hand side. You've got a blind in the rear window, and in the armrest the passenger can control these functions as well, and it's just a lovely place to be. I remember picking up some relatives, and they found it very relaxing. I collected them from the airport, put all the luggage in the boot, and they were just kind of relaxing in the back. And it's like, I think the closest you'll get to being chauffeur driven. These cars were really exceptional value, but also the quality, I think, was way ahead of its time. If I was to have, my top 5 cars, this is, as I said before, not in any particular order, because it says here number 4, but this would definitely be in there for sure. An absolutely lovely car. Now, I think also for cars, it really depends, it can depend on what your situation is. What is your reason for owning it? Do you want a car which is a family car? Are you doing a lot of motorway journeys? Do you do maybe you go to work? You might be single and you go maybe via some back roads. So so buying a car is multifaceted, and so for all of these factors and variables to consider. But for me, due to my lifestyle and the kind of the journeys which I go on, I would have this car for sure within my collection. Beauty of it, they're cheap as well. They represent, I think, astonishing value. All the things which you get, it would actually put to shame a lot of the modern cars. Okay, so let's go to the next car. Toyota RAV4. I've done a review on this car. I've owned a number of 4x4s. Now this is not a fully fledged 4x4. It doesn't have a low range gearbox, but I think it's a good balance between a car-like handling and the size. The size would be more than adequate to meet your needs. It's got the slightly kind of raised ground clearance there. So if you get snow, you'd be kind of better off in this than like your regular car. It reminds me of an upmarket Toyota Corolla with slight 4x4 ability. If you, for example, if it's snowing and you're just kind of getting into your car, you just press that button, which will then distribute the power equally, 50% to the front and 50% to the back. Now, one of the things with this function is that after 25 miles per hour, it will go off and it will just continue to be essentially a front wheel drive. But one of the things when driving for most people's situation is that it's just getting started is a hard thing in snow. So I think that would be sufficient. I haven't actually driven in snow in this car, so I can't really comment on the four-wheel drive ability, but I really do enjoy this car. It's a good all-rounder. I feel it's got a good boot space, got the good passenger space. The driving position is good. You've got good visibility, relatively cheap running costs. In fact, its running cost is very similar to a Toyota Corolla, believe it or not. And again, I think these cars represent exceptional value. If you're looking for a petrol automatic, especially, they tend to command a premium, so that's something to be mindful of if you are thinking of buying one. But without a shadow of a doubt, I would thoroughly recommend this RAV4. Gosh, is that the time? God, I didn't realise I've been going on for so long. So all in all, these 5 cars were on my they've really stood out to me in all of the cars which I've owned. They're not the cheapest of cars to run. Some of them, for example, the E34 and the LS400 and 430. In terms of maintenance, there are some maintenance costs there. But I mean, just in general, some of my 5 favourite cars which I've owned, those are them. So again, thank you very much for listening. If you've got any questions about any of the cars which I've done a review over, please put it in the chat box below. Please like, share and subscribe. Until next time, take care and bye bye.